Guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, so we're going to get started soon. If anyone has any open announcements, you're welcome to holler right now. Otherwise, so we have a new map in the kitchen. You guys may have saw it. There's some questions about it. It's just for fun. Culture Club thought it'd be cool to have a map where you could put pins where you've been. So when we're drinking on Friday, you can say, oh, you went to Bangalore, I went to Bangalore, and then have a conversation about it. So it's kind of cool. And thank you, Corbin and Jessica, for putting that up. So, yeah. And yes, next week is the data competency first data workshop. It's the RWMS one, so we hope to see you there. But it is pretty straightforward. So if you feel very comfortable with your SQL and Spring, then it's definitely optional. But we encourage people to show up. So Justin and I will be doing that. What's up?
We put up the flyers for that.
I did.
So
all of the flyers?
I recruited some sturgeons.
Some read material there as well.
But yeah, hope to see you guys there. And without further ado, Brian.
Hello everyone, thank you for coming. I'm Brian Sokol, Senior Engineer here at Salon. We're going to be talking about imposter syndrome today. Please clap. Before we start, I just want to mention I am not a licensed psychologist, psychiatrist, psychotherapist, psychonaut. I am none of those things. I'm just a guy who was curious about this. I've experienced imposter syndrome in the past. Didn't know what it was. Now I know. I want to tell everyone. Okay? So, what is imposter syndrome? Let me give you a timely example. Okay? Let's say that you are an actor and you have been cast to play Batman in a new blockbuster movie. You're being asked to join the ranks of many incredible actors who have been amazing at playing Batman in the past, such as these people. Okay? These people have all been amazing at playing Batman. And also these guys too. Now let's say you're in this new movie, and this movie also stars a bunch of other really amazing actors, and you're going to be acting alongside these people. People such as these folks, all very good actors who have been in many things, all very impressive, and also this guy's in the movie too. Now, you might be intimidated by all of this talent and legacy, and you might start thinking to yourself, you coming through?
I'm just warming my food, but
Sounds good. What do you have?
Lasagna.
Sounds good. All right. So you might be thinking to yourself, I thought I was a good actor, but there's all these great actors around I'm going to have to work with. What if they find out that I'm not as great of an actor as everyone thinks I am? Maybe I don't deserve to be in this movie. You might be pretty sad. It turns out this is a natural feeling that a lot of people have all the time, and it's called imposter syndrome. Ben Affleck is a fantastic actor. I will fight you later if we have to. He's a great actor. He is a great Batman. And it's not his fault that Batman v Superman is a terrible movie. That is Zack Snyder's fault. That is David Goyer's fault. Anyway, Ben Affleck has to overcome this, this imaginary Ben Affleck that I have proposed to you has to overcome this imposter syndrome. But there is a wrinkle. What about this guy? He might also be thinking he's the worst actor in this movie, and he might be afraid that people will find out he's a fraud. And he should be, because he's terrible. The difference between being an imposter and having imposter syndrome is a pretty fine line. And we're going to take a little bit of a step back here and try and define some things. So, this is the formal definition that was written in 1978 that I've taken from a couple of different, one specific source that I've cited on the bottom in writing too small for you guys to read because I don't want you to go and do your own research. Imposter syndrome is used to designate an internal experience of intellectual phoniness that appears to be particularly prevalent and intense among a select sample of high-achieving women. Despite outstanding academic and professional accomplishments, women who experience the imposter phenomenon persist in believing that they are really not bright and have fooled anyone who thinks otherwise. So, until recently, a lot of the studies around imposter syndrome have focused on women, which it seems natural, especially back then. It seemed natural because women were not found in the workplace in very high-ranking positions. I also don't like this definition because it tries to place the blame on you like it's your fault, just like get over it, So we're going to try and update this a little bit as we go. But essentially, imposter syndrome is a form of low self-esteem. It's your inability to reconcile your actual abilities with your perceived abilities. And it makes you feel like you are, it makes you feel like even though you have the skills that people think you have, you're afraid they're going to find out you're a fraud, you can't do anything, and then, all hell breaks loose after that. You can imagine all sorts of scenarios. It is more than just a lack of confidence. A lot of people, when they talk about this kind of thing, other people will say, just boost your confidence, just get your confidence up. But that's not helpful. It's a little helpful, but it's not very helpful. It can also lead to overconfidence, which is a completely different problem that I'm not going to talk about too much. Once you become aware of the existence of imposter syndrome, at least from my experience and from reading other people's experiences, it becomes easier to deal with it just knowing that it exists and knowing that it's not just you who's feeling this inadequacy. And once you learn about it, it becomes easier to be more introspective about yourself and it becomes easier to assess your own abilities. I have nothing to show on the slides here, by the way. This isn't like a technical issue. I just have nothing for you to look at right now. So, like I said, traditionally studies have focused on women. Yeah, go ahead. We're not doing anything. Studies have focused on women, and they've shown that the higher that a woman rises in her industry, the more likely it is that she will experience some sort of imposter syndrome. This is due to common workplace obstacles, such as the perception that women need to be more like their male counterparts to be accepted, or that they need to compete with other women just to get ahead of that pack. These are other issues that I'm not really fully prepared to address in this presentation. But other studies have shown, more recent studies have shown that in many industries, men experience imposter syndrome just as much as women do. We just don't like to talk about it as much. So in our particular industry, technology, there is practically a built-in imposter syndrome effect for women because until relatively recently, women were not very prevalent in our industry. They are a visible minority. I'm just looking at the audience right now, and I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of everybody here.
This is my seat now.
So, there's not many, and it's not uncommon for women who are working in a work environment surrounded by a lot of men to be wondering if somehow they got here by fluke or mistake. Or if they don't deserve to be here, and if eventually someone's going to look at them and go, why are you here? And tell you to get out of here. Now, I apologize if I'm generalizing too much, but I don't, I have a limited amount of time and I want to go through every single scenario, but I'm trying to, encompass as much as possible here. So, that's not to say that we men don't have the same problem at work. In industries such as ours, where we have a very large concentration of very, very smart and skilled people, it's very easy for us to look at our colleagues and secretly think we don't measure up. So, for the sake of time and fairness, I'm going to try and address the rest of this to people in general. So before I get going on what we can do about imposter syndrome, I want to give you guys some examples of some people who have publicly stated that they have experienced imposter syndrome. Tina Fey said, the beauty of the imposter syndrome is that you vacillate between extreme egomania and a complete feeling of I'm a fraud, oh God, they're on to me, I'm a fraud. So you just try to ride the egomania when it comes and enjoy it, and then slide through the idea of fraud. Michelle Pfeiffer said, I still think people will find out that I'm really not very talented, I'm really not very good, and it's all a big sham. Kate Winslet said, sometimes I wake up in the morning before I go off to a shoot and I think, I can't do this, I'm a fraud. Denzel Washington said, the last 5 minutes before you go to that first Broadway preview, if you don't have that, what the hell am I doing here feeling, if you don't have that, then they say it's time to quit. And I want to point out that that one is not like, it's not to say that, if you're feeling confident, then you're doing something wrong. It's to say that this is a very common feeling. So common that people say if you aren't feeling that, then you're probably doing something wrong. Yeah, in this scenario, he's talking about his first Broadway show. He's already got the part. They're about to open. He clearly has the talent. Maya Angelou said, I have written 11 books, but each time I think, uh-oh, they're going to find me out now. I've run a game on everybody, and they're going to find me out. Don Cheadle said, all I can see is everything I'm doing wrong that is a sham and a fraud. And Neil Gaiman said, the first problem of any kind of even limited success is the unshakable conviction that you are getting away with something and at any moment now they will discover you. It's imposter syndrome, something my wife Amanda christened the fraud police. So, what causes imposter syndrome? You guys. Everybody around you. Your environment and your circumstances. If you could lock yourself in a little box away from everything, you'd probably not experience imposter syndrome unless you were aware of the other people locked in other boxes and you were wondering if you were as good as them. When people expect the best from you, it makes you feel like they might be expecting more than you can give. And yes, you can belittle people. You can cause a type of imposter syndrome maliciously. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not trying to convince you to stop being mean to people on purpose. Just, I know you guys. But
Are you endorsing it?
no, I'm not endorsing it. No. See, I lost my place in my notes. Thank you. Next slide. Thank you. So, how do you overcome your imposter syndrome? Honestly, it is very difficult to overcome it on your own. It's not something that you can just do immediately. It's something you really have to work at. Once you know it exists, like I said, it becomes easier to see it and to acknowledge when it's happening, and then you can kind of start going through the different steps to see if you can get around that feeling. Over time, your perception of yourself will slowly start to align with reality, and you'll experience it less and less. So what's about to follow now is going to sound a lot like a motivational speech, and it is, so deal with it. Know your importance. Sometimes imposter syndrome is caused by thinking you're more important than you actually are. I know that sounds harsh, but sometimes you think you have this big part you need to play, you don't think you're up for it. If you sit back and think, I'm really, if I fail, what's the worst that could happen? If you kind of get into that mindset, you measure yourself up a little more accurately to where you're at. I know it sounds harsh, but sometimes you have to let go of excess self-importance. Accept your role in your success. You didn't get here by accident. We have very good interviewers at this company in particular. There's a lot of steps, I know. It took me like 3-4 months to get hired here. You're not here by some accident or mistake. You're here because you deserve to be here. Just remember that. Try and focus on others. I know I said at the beginning that it helps to look inward. Sometimes it helps to look to others. If you try to use your skills to help others, they see you as an asset. And when you feel like you're an important asset, you feel less likely that that person is going to see you as a fraud. Out yourself. So, admitting it is the first step to recovery, right? You don't need, I'm not saying necessarily that you need to make a big show of it. You don't need to make a humorous PowerPoint and stand in front of everybody and tell them, that you're an imposter and everything. But it does help to find someone you trust and tell them how you're feeling and have them, explain. They'll probably be pretty shocked, like, oh, I had no idea you felt this way. You always seemed very skilled. You seem like you know what you're doing. And as you try and explain to them why you think you're a fraud, you'll probably start to realize that you're really not. You'll start saying, like, oh, I don't think I could do this. Oh, well, actually, I did do that one time. So, okay, well, I don't feel like if I was put in this situation, I could do this. Well, I actually kind of did that one time. That kind of thing. You start to talk it over. Realize that being wrong is not fraud. Not everybody is an expert in everything. I know a lot of you are experts in a lot of things. I'm sure even those of you who think that you are experts, like the expert in something, I'm sure there's something you don't know about that thing. Similarly, you have to realize pretty much everyone here is an imposter in some way or another. We all change who we are. We change who we choose to present ourselves as, depending on who we're talking to and what situation we're in. So, in a sense, we're all imposters. It's just the degree of imposterization. I made that word up. Hope you like that. It's the degree to which we are imposters and whether or not is it actually impacting your happiness that when you need to worry about doing something about it. But it happens to all of us. You need to just keep that in mind. You might be talking to your role model thinking, wow, this person is perfect, when in reality they also think that they're faking it. Fake it till you make it. When I first started here, I said to someone, boy, like when I got put on my first project, I said to someone, man, I don't know, this seems like a lot of responsibility right off the bat. And they said, fake it till you make it. And I said, okay. And yes, it worked out just fine. Sometimes pretending to be something leads you to become that thing. And so if you're put in a situation where you think, oh man, I don't know that I can do this, just try. If you have the skills, you'll succeed. And then you'll realize, oh, I wasn't an imposter after all. So, how do you foster an imposter-free environment? I said that you all are the reason that I'm an imposter. Okay? So, this is how we're all going to work together to make sure that we have as few imposters here as possible. Don't assume that everything you know is common knowledge. Don't say, like if you're having a conversation with someone and something comes up and they say, oh, what's that? Don't say something like, oh, you don't know? I thought everybody knew that. Or, oh, didn't you, find out about this in school or whatever. Don't say those kinds of things. It just leads people to believe they should know that. And then they'll feel bad for not knowing that. And it leads to an imposter syndrome. Everyone has to learn everything for the first time at some point, right? And I should mention, the opposite of imposter syndrome is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of that, but it's basically when an unskilled person believes that their abilities are much higher than they actually are. And the reason I bring this up, aside from it just being an interesting little tidbit, is that studies into the Dunning-Kruger effect have yielded some interesting corollaries, such that people who are highly skilled tend to think that things that are easy for them are also easy for other people, which is rarely true. So try not to fall into that pitfall of, this is easy for me, so clearly I should be able to just, give someone some simple instructions and off they go, because it may not be. And doing so will lead that person to think that they're inadequate because, well, this person who I clearly see as an expert in the thing, in the topic, thinks that I should be able to do this. And I can't do that, so eventually they're going to find out I'm a fraud. This is one that I see a lot. Try not to start instructions with the word just. Don't say, when someone says, how do you do this? Don't say, oh, just do this. Because that very subtle just at the beginning implies this thing I'm telling you to do should be very simple. And if you don't know how to do that, or if it seems complex to you, you're going to feel like, oh man, everyone thinks this is easy, but it's not easy for me. And more to the point, obviously don't say, obviously. Or clearly, things like that.
Clearly you shouldn't say that.
Clearly, guys. Don't say guys. This is a really hard one for me. I think I've said it twice now in this presentation. It seems like such an informal word, but it automatically creates an air of, this is the men's club, right? If you're a woman in this scenario and people are always saying, hey, let's go talk to those guys, it creates that subconscious like, well, this is really the men. This is the men who are involved here. This is the men who are part of this group, and the women are like the exceptions instead of exceptionals. Personally, I try and say folks when I'm referring to people, but it's very difficult for me to also not say guys, but I'm working on it. Recognize when you need to encourage people and when you need to teach people. I see this from time to time. If you're trying to, if you've taken someone under your wing and you're trying to lead them to a conclusion, eventually you get to a point where they just don't have the information they need to reach that conclusion. And I've seen people who just, they just keep kind of pushing at it. And the more you push at it, and the more you push at it, eventually they start thinking, wow, this apparently is supposed to be really easy and I'm just not getting it. So it's a very fine line. I can't tell you exactly when to stop, but that's just something to be on the lookout for. At some point, you need to tell them what the answer is and they will still learn. Avoid too much praise for simple tasks. It sounds counterintuitive. You feel like you want to reward people for doing good things. But if you give someone an unduly large amount of praise for a simple task, that person may think that you have lowered your expectations of what they can do. And then the next time when they give you a complex task, you might be thinking, well, I don't know if I can live up to the amount of praise I got for doing that simple thing. It sounds counterintuitive, it's a fine line, I understand. These are just things to keep in mind. Be a cool teacher. If you're talking to someone who clearly is not as knowledgeable as you are about a certain topic, try and teach it to them as if you think it's cool that they don't know it, and you're excited for them to learn it for the first time. Don't make it seem like you're excited to be able to teach them. A subtle difference. You want to try and elevate them and not you. Be honest about your own ability. So when you're talking to people, try to, be honest about the gaps in your knowledge. If there's something you don't know, don't try and make it up or fill it in, or skirt around it. Just say, I don't know that. I should go look that up because that sounds interesting or whatever. If you show others that you're not perfect, they'll realize it's okay to also not be perfect. And if you both don't know the same thing, there's a learning opportunity for both of you. So there you go. So that's the majority of my presentation. My goal with this, hopefully, is to get everyone from being this to being this. All right, this is the time-killing part. If anyone has any questions or they want to share stories or suggestions, anything they think I got wrong, thoughts about anything, feel free. I'm not really moderating or anything, so we got time. Yes?
I don't care if you call it guys.
Okay, fair enough.
But the point being that I know people who are bothered by it, but the point being is that if don't call out women specifically, hey boys and girls, or just folks is great. Guys can get iffy. I grew up calling whole groups of girls guys. There's not a single man in there. It doesn't. But the point being that be inclusive.
one thing that's important to note, like I mentioned all that stuff about how we can help each other, but when you really know someone, it's okay to rib each other and make jokes and make fun of other people if you know for sure you're not actually really hurting them, Because we all have friends and we don't want to be walking on eggshells around each other, right? So yeah, it's like that. If you know they're cool with it,
So, have they not updated that formal definition? It's still.
I don't know that that's like imposter syndrome isn't really an official psychological definition. So the formal definition is kind of like whatever the latest studies show.
Yeah, I don't think it's in the DSM or anything.
Yeah. So basically, what I called the formal definition was, I guess you could really say it's more like the first definition. And it covers it pretty well, except that it's just limited to studies of women. Anybody else? Yeah.
I think, so the quarterly, I think it was Tobin who said something about it's easy at slalom to kind of diminish yourself because we're the team of A kids, everybody. So it's this as an organization, I think a lot of people are particularly prone to imposter syndrome just because there's a stupid amount of talent in this room alone, let alone the rest of the organization. So just something to be aware of. That, you should be somewhat proud of your position here, and there is actually a rigorous process to get people into slalom and to keep people out of slalom as well. If you want to be a better at yourself, work with another client's development group. that'll cure you pretty quick.
Well said. Yeah.
So I think one of the things that's interesting, particularly about imposter syndrome to me, is that there's a sort of you talked about being able to focus on yourself, really analyze what is my actual performance and that sort of thing. At the same time, though, I think that a huge portion of it could definitely come from only focusing on yourself, right, and not being realistic about what other people are, because one of my favorite Ellen DeGeneres jokes, which I have many, so if you want to know. But the whole idea is basically that we spend so much time thinking about what other people are thinking about us, even though all they're thinking about is what other people are thinking of them, right? So it's the whole idea that all we're focused on in terms of analyzing ourselves is what are they going to think of me, right? What is this person's evaluation of my performance? And we're not thinking about how does my performance compare to theirs, or how does whatever, because we really only ever see people in their best, right? When we're working with a group of people, for the most part, we only pay attention to when they succeed, or we only get a tinge of doubt when they say something we don't know, right? We don't keep track of all the times that, oh yeah, I know that too. Oh yeah, I'm familiar, we only pay attention to where our knowledge gaps are. So to me, that's a big component of it, and something to be aware of is that, you can see other people as experts in everything, or somebody has the same title as you, and you only see them do well, but recognizing there's an entire internal monologue going on in their head that's probably similar to yours, right? Just recognizing that you only see what they're exposing in terms of their performance. So yeah.
Hey Brian, so do you think so in Agile we have retrospectives, do you think that helps with dealing with imposter syndrome? Does it hurt? What's your thoughts on that?
That is a good question. I've always felt that it has been helpful for me to know, large part of the retrospectives I've been in have been explaining what went wrong and knowing that I'm not the only person who screwed up. So Yeah, I think they're generally pretty helpful. I mean, I guess it depends on who's in it and how serious they're taking it, but. All right.